my name is Miss Lincoln and I'm going to be going over Station Activity 3. So in this station, students will learn to differentiate between learned traits and inherited traits. So if you remember from the video at the beginning of the lesson, an inherited trait is one that's genetically passed on from your parents, like having dimples or freckles. Whereas a learned trait is one that you don't know how to do when you're born. So it's something you learn, like playing an instrument or learning how to drive. So in this activity, we're going to be applying our knowledge of inherited and learned traits to play a game called Survival of the Narfs. So I'm going to give you some background information on that real quick. You are all a member of a species known as Narfocilius, commonly known as the Narfs. Narfs are very intelligent creatures with many amazing abilities. They are about 3 feet tall. They come in a variety of colors, but the two most common varieties are blue and green. They live in rainforest environments. Remarkably, they have the ability to learn skills very much like humans do. It is not uncommon to see them painting or playing basketball. Narfs are typically gentle creatures, but are sometimes fierce when challenged by a predator. Narfs are slow creatures, and they do not migrate unless forced out by unforeseen circumstances. They typically stay in the lower branches of trees. Narfs are omnivorous and will eat nearly anything. They have teeth very similar to human teeth. They prefer fruits from the trees but can also eat small animals. Small animals are sometimes difficult for them to eat if their teeth are not extremely sharp. So, now that you know a little bit more about the Narfs, I'm going to explain the rules of the game. So, each student will draw 4 inherited traits from this stack. Ideally, these would be laminated and much larger, but yes, the stack will be face down and students will draw 4 inherited traits. Now, since these are inherited traits, they're a part of your DNA, so you can't change them throughout the entire game. However, if you're a student, you may draw 1 learned trait from this stack for each round of the game. Okay, so I'm going to read off 4 different scenarios. And remember, students, you are a Narf in this situation. So for each scenario, you are going to figure out whether or not you would be likely to survive. So each student will get a sheet that looks like this. And they will list their 4 inherited traits and list their 4 learned traits that they draw for each round. And basically for each scenario, they will write whether or not they are likely to survive and explain why. Scenario 1. All is well in the lush green rainforest where there is an abundance of food and a mild climate. Suddenly, disaster strikes. A giant Narf-eating monster attacks. The monster, commonly known as the sharp tooth, is physically superior to all other animals. It is very fast and strong. It can jump high enough to reach the lower branches of trees. It has very sharp teeth for its carnivorous eating habits. However, the sharp tooth does have poor eyesight. It can see colors pretty well, but it cannot make out shapes very well. It has an average sense of smell, but very good hearing. The sharp tooth's major weakness is music. Any music will immediately put the sharp tooth to sleep, and it will stay asleep for a long time. So, now that you've just heard scenario 1, if you are a student, you're going to go onto your sheet. After you've filled out number 1 and number 2, for number 3, you are going to explain for scenario 1 whether or not you are likely to survive and explain why or why not based on your 4 inherited traits and the 1 learned trait that you drew for this round. So moving on to scenario 2, you will draw another learned trait, and I'm going to go ahead and continue reading the rest of the scenarios. Scenario 2. Things are not going well for the Narfs. Human poachers have been killing them for their incredibly soft fur. Many people enjoy Narf fur coats and Narf skin rugs. The green Narfs have been particularly targeted because they have much softer fur. The poachers usually hunt with a bow and arrow because guns will draw attention to their illegal poaching practices. Some Narfs have extremely thick skin, which is difficult to penetrate with an arrow. Scenario 3. Deforestation practices have been destroying the trees where the Narfs live and the fruits that they commonly eat. Some narfs are able to change food sources, but most narfs are not fast enough to catch live animals, nor do they have sharp enough teeth. Some narfs have learned to garden and grow food, which has allowed some of them to survive, but not the ones who don't know how to grow food. Scenario 4. Many trees in the area where the narfs live have been destroyed. This has caused heavy flooding due to high levels of rainfall. Before, the rainfall would have been regulated by the dense trees and vegetation. This has caused pools of water to form in the area where the narfs live. Some of these pools can be quite deep, 6 feet or more. There are some food sources available at the bottom of these pools, so narfs that can dive or swim can easily get this food. If you're a student, by now you should have filled out number 2, where you list your 4 learn traits that you drew for each round, and all of the scenarios 1 through 4, whether or not you thought you would survive. The final question on this sheet asks you to list 1 inherited trait and 1 learned trait that you have that help you succeed. Okay, so after you finish filling that out, I want you to think about some key questions. Okay, so the first one is, were there certain traits that seemed to help you survive better than other traits? Was it helpful for you to be able to draw a new learned behavior for each situation, or no? What is the main difference between learned behaviors and inherited traits? And if we were in person, I would have you share out which traits you wrote down that help you personally succeed. All right, that concludes Station 3 activity. Thanks for watching.